What music?
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
We won't be out long.
Take your time. Track's all yours.
You ready?
The name on the middle of that steering wheel should tell you that I was born ready. Hit it. Attaboy.
Let me drive. I won't make a fool out of you.
I got a message for all of them. Shake and bake.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind? That just happened.
These cars, you sit in a box, a coffin, gasoline all around you. It isn't like it being inside a bomb.
It's tough enough being a girl on the track. Living in my dad's shadow doesn't help much.
You have to be kind to the car. You feel the poor thing groaning underneath you.
No race was ever won in the first corner.
I'm gonna give you an engine, low to the ground, extra big oil pan will cut the wind from underneath you. That'll give you 30 to 40 more horsepower.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
Brakes are warm. Tires are warm.
I'll work in the cars and I'll drive and I'll eat and sleep and I'll work in the cars and I'll drive.
Damn fast, and when he runs it close together, it requires fantastic concentration and rather special skills.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
If you're going to push a piece of machinery to the limit and expect it to hold together, you have to have some sense of where that limit is.
Besides, the best drivers don't dwell on the future or the past. The best drivers focus only on the present.
They could never have imagined it, those pioneers who invented the automobile, that it would possess us like this in our imaginations, our dreams.
I'm gonna give you a fuel line that will hold an extra gallon of gas. I'm gonna shave half an inch off you and shape you like a bullet.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
Racing is in my blood.
I was put on this earth to race cars.
I accept every time I get in my car. There's 20% chance I could die, and I can live with it, but not 1% more.
No, Nicky, don't bring the percentages into this. Don't be a pro. The minute you do that, you kill what's good about this. You kill the sport.
And at that speed, your reactions can barely keep up with these sudden changes in direction.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up?
You want me to work the pit and you drive? Fine, we'll try that.
The car's a living, breathing thing, and she's alive.
If any of us imagined, really imagined, what it would be like to go into a tree at 150 miles an hour, we would probably never get into the cars at all. None of us.
Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
I am just as good as anybody out there on that track, and I don't need anybody to win my races for me.
I wish my daddy were alive to see this, to feel this.
And when we get you prime painted and weighed, you'll be ready to go out on that racetrack. You hear me? You're gonna be perfect.
You don't understand what happens, do you? They make 10,000 cars, they make them exactly the same way, and one or two of them turn out to be something special. Nobody knows why.
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
So it has always seemed to me that to do something very dangerous requires a certain absence of imagination.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
Soon you will know what it is like to be defeated by the hands of somebody who is truly better than you.
The only thing to do here is to drive just as fast as you know how and hope your car doesn't break.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
If you ain't first, you're last.
There's 40 other vultures out there who managed to finish the race on their tires. You see Darrell Waltrip using up his tires?
There's nothing I can't do with a race car.
But hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? Come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
Sometimes you could swear the whole thing's falling to bits.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
On the other hand, I suppose potential problems are in the back of your mind all the time.
So in many ways, I feel responsible for what happened. And
You were, but trust me, watching you win those races while I was fighting for my life, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
You're so lucky. Sit there all closed in by machinery and bolts, precise things. There's hardly any room for you. It must be a nice, safe feeling.
Yeah, you gotta learn to trust something. Might just as well be the seat of your pants.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
We can drive. We can drive beyond the limits of the tires, the engine, the car, anything else.
Look out there. Out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes. Every gear change, every corner. Perfect. You see it.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
But it isn't just business, is it?
what we do. It's passion, love, which is why we are prepared to risk our lives for it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Why does everybody keep telling me what my problem is?
That you get so emotional.
You would never, ever say that to a guy.
If you don't leave your feelings off the track, you're never going to get what you want.
I'm a race driver, and I can win it on my own.
Please let me race.
Fine. Then let's race.
Greetings everybody and welcome along once again to the Retro Racing Managers League. It is Jake Sanson here in the commentary box. It's the Italian Grand Prix of 1991 and my oh my has there been some exciting movement over the last few weeks. It's going to be a very exciting battle as we continue to get ourselves into an exciting brace of races coming up with the best final few races coming up on the calendar after the craziness of Spa-Francorchamps. It's definitely going to be an intriguing race here at Monza and it is the Temple of Speed that will give us plenty of entertainment and excitement. We'll go straight in with pre-qualifying. We'll give you all the news and the latest updates as the pre-qualifying race goes on. But we are definitely ready for an exciting encounter out here on the circuit at Monza. So without further ado, let's get straight into the action. It is Aguri Suzuki and Naoki Hattori that have put their Hondas on the front row of the grid. Eric Bernard and Hideki Noda on the second row. Then Paul Tracy in the Modena Lamborghini from Perry McCarthy, who steps into the AGS. Andy Wallace and Carl Wendlinger in their Jordans. Then Damon Hill in the Renault. Roberto Moreno in the Coloni. Eddie Cheever and Adrian Fernandez in the Gulf Eurobrun Fords. Then on row 7, it's Andrea De Cesaris alongside Tommy Byrne. That is, of course, Coloni alongside Zach Speed. Stefan Johansson steps into the Renault, and it's Joachim Winkelhock who is there alongside him. Adrian Campos steps into the Fonmetal. Nicola Larini and Emanuele Pirro in their Dalaras. Alex Zanardi, the winner last time out at Spa. Martin Donnelly alongside Eric Comas. Then JJ Leto and Pierluigi Martini. And taking up the back row of the starting grid, it'll be the two cars from Real. Ricard Rydell and Alan McNish, who will be starting towards the tail end. So everybody gearing up for an exciting battle ahead of us. And the Hondas are at the front row of the starting grid. They're doing a tribute livery here in Monza to one of their departed colleagues. And it's going to be a very interesting battle for them. But there's going to be a whole new branding to the Honda team from the next race. And that's going to be a bit more of a sign of things to come. Away we go. The two Hondas moving away off the starting grid. Perry McCarthy making a very good start there in the AGS. 27 laps of this Monza circuit, of course. And there's going to be some interesting battles going into the first corner. Everybody just trying to break for the first turn. The Hondas have got through in first and second. Oh, up in the air goes one of the Jordans. Now that looks to me like Andy Wallace got airborne. He manages to get going. It doesn't look like the car's too badly damaged, but he certainly went up in the air a little bit. But there is Naoki Hattori in front of Aguri Suzuki. So in fact, Naoki Hattori getting into the lead of the race, and Suzuki going slowly as Paul Tracy manages to get past him. So Paul Tracy in the Modena Lamborghini. That doesn't bode well for Aguri Suzuki. Maybe he's got problems already. But Naoki Hattori, who has just signed an extension of his Honda deal for 1992, he's going to be part of the all-new Honda racing team. It'll be a completely different departure from the Leighton House era of earlier on. In fact, they want to distance themselves from it completely. And you can see some great Japanese messages on the car this weekend for the Honda team as they continue to move their way through. Aguri Suzuki is back behind the wheel of the car. Apparently, the rumours coming out of Honda are that he has been offered a race drive next year, but he's got to score points to shake off some of the issues that he brought up with the team earlier on in the season. They want him to score points in Grand Prix racing and basically move Honda into the top 10 of the Constructors' Championship. If he's able to do that, then they'll give him a race drive next year. If not, then he's going to have to look for employment elsewhere. And there is rumblings that there will be other opportunities for him as a Japanese driver. As up the inside, Eric Bernard gets the move on his Canadian teammate Paul Tracy. So a fabulous opportunity there for the drivers to move forward. Apparently there's a rumour that Paul Tracy is going to be driving an IndyCar next year. He's already started talking about a potential contract for next season. He wants to be racing at the front of races rather than battling for a Grand Prix pre-qualifying. Roberto Moreno up the inside of his own teammate. So that's Andrea De Cesaris down to 11th position. And we've got the first of the Renaults in the mix there. That's Damon Hill, whose teammate this weekend is the experienced Stefan Johansson. After Jean-Marc Gounod is missing the Italian Grand Prix. He'll be back apparently in the car at the Portuguese Grand Prix unless the Renault team decide otherwise. Damon Hill, who is very much on the verge of potentially signing a contract extension for 1992. But there are some wild rumours that they're actually courting Ayrton Senna, would you believe, for next year, which would be massive for the Renault team if they can make that happen, especially considering that the other big French giants, Peugeot, have acquired the services of both Alain Prost and Jean Alesi for next year. In fact, Jean Alesi has not returned to the Tyrrell team. He's actually gone straight to Peugeot and is doing extensive testing for them. So they're going to have a car that they believe will be fast straight out of the blocks in 1992 and will be regularly competing with the top 10 teams once they get through to Grand Prix. So that'll be interesting. Oh, there's a slowing Hattori. Hattori, the race leader. He's got a puncture. So I'm not sure where he's picked that up, but Naoki Hattori, the race leader, punctured and out of the race. Very unfortunate for him. He's only just signed the deal to stay with Honda for next year. But Naoki Hattori, I'm afraid, is out of this race already from the lead. So bitterly disappointing for Naoki Hattori as the rest of the field just storm past. And that's Martini! Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi breaking down. And that's only after the second lap. So lap 3, and we've lost Hattori and Martini on the same lap. So big drama already here at Monza. Now, we've been told that this is a circuit that really is going to take its toll on teams. Apparently, they're really going to be running the gauntlet on tyres. There were a few issues in qualifying. Several drivers coming off the road in the qualifying session. So this is a place that's really attacking the tyres. Alan McNish running there very wide, but Aguri Suzuki, who is back in the car, having missed the last 3 races of the championship. He's now back in the hot seat, and he's got 6 races, essentially, to put Honda into the top 10 of the Constructors' Championship. That's his mission for the rest of the season. He's out in front of Bernard and Tracy, and hoping to do just that. Wendlinger is the man who's put the Jordan team into the Grand Prix for the time being, as Hideki Noda is going wheel-to-wheel with his new teammate, Perry McCarthy. So Perry McCarthy doing a fair job. Oh, and there's a car smoking in front. It's Wendlinger! Wendlinger in the Jordan! Wow, that is very unfortunate. Carl Wendlinger on the 4th lap of this race is already in very dire straits indeed. So the Austrian is going to be pulling up and pulling out of the race very soon indeed. There he goes. So, well, there's side-by-side between the 2 AGS cars, and one of them nearly strikes Wendlinger's car. So Carl Wendlinger pulling off the road and out of the race, unfortunately. So game over for the Austrian, as his race is well and truly over. Oh, and that's Roberto Moreno! Moreno losing it on the exit of the Della Roggia. So Carl Wendlinger dropping out of the race. Now let's see a replay. What happened there to Roberto Moreno? So the Coloni driver working his way through into the left. Oh, he's just taken it with far too much speed. And Moreno drops the Coloni and manages to get the car going again. He was actually very lucky indeed there not to be clouted by the Eurobrun as he came through. So Roberto Moreno, the Brazilian, and there is Wendlinger's car being lifted on the crane out of the race. So that is one of the Jordans gone already. So we've lost a Jordan, a Honda, and a Minardi. So a very early bath for those 3 drivers. It's a 27-lap race, and obviously these cars have very high attrition in pre-qualifying. We saw that particularly at Spa-Francorchamps. Here's Adrian Fernandez, the Mexican. He's trying to get on terms with Andrea De Cesaris. So trying to get past the Coloni, which I have to say, much improved this weekend in terms of the raw pace of the Subaru engine. They really want to try and maximise this package for next year. Subaru are very committed to extending development of their engine, and they've said they'll happily work with any team on the grid that is willing to put a Subaru engine in the back of their car, and they want to do some extensive work at the end of this season to make that a reality. There's a lot of Japanese influence on the grid for next year. We've got Honda and we've got Toyota, which we'll talk about a little bit later on as well. So that'll be really exciting to see all these Japanese names on the grid. Perhaps Subaru will stay for 1992, but it's got to be with the right team, apparently, from what we've heard. So Eric Comas in the sole remaining Minardi. He's going slowly. Well, Minardi's race doesn't even last 5 laps. Gearbox problems for Eric Comas. The Minardi team really struggling this year. And you've got to feel sorry for the team boss, Michael Gillespie. What on earth have they got to do to turn their form around? As the team are just looking nowhere at the moment in terms of reliability. The Minardis, they've just got to keep going, but they've got no points on the board. Now, Michael Gillespie has been told that his job is safe for next year, for 1992. It is a possibility that they're going to continue on with the Ferrari engines for next year, which customer engine Ferraris will actually be they'll be rebadged as Maranellos. So we can expect to see the Minardi Maranello team next year. Oh, and that's Perry McCarthy. Big smoke coming out of the back of the AGS. So that is very much game over for Perry McCarthy. He's pulling off to the side, but he's coasting down the pit lane. He's managed to bump start it. So Perry McCarthy coming into the pits. Now, what can they hope to do? Can they reset it and send him on his way? And Moreno's got a loose wheel. Now, that explains what spun him off the racetrack at the Della Roggia. So Roberto Moreno with a loose wheel. He comes into the pits to get that tightened up. Probably a new set of tyres now after the spin as well. And there's Aguri Suzuki. 3 seconds clear now of Bernard. Tommy Byrne going wheel to wheel with Nicola Larini and Stefan Johansson in the Renault. And Johansson able to get a very solid run. And that's because Tommy Byrne's got a problem. He's got an oil leak on that car. Oh, and there it is. It ignites. So Tommy Byrne, I'm afraid, he's going to be well and truly out of this race in the Zach Speed. Very unfortunate, the Zach Speed team with their BMW engines. And it's quite possible that Zach Speed are going to go back to the drawing board and work with BMW on a works manufacturer entry to Grand Prix racing that would make its debut in as early as 93 or 94. They're not looking at it for 1992. And they're quite surprised that... Oh, he's just gone clean off the road, Tommy Byrne. So that's one way to retire from the race. But, yeah, big flames out of the back of that car. Very unfortunate. But Zach Speed is apparently being tasked with the masterminding of the BMW factory entry to Grand Prix racing in future years, although they haven't gone works for 1992. And apparently they're in communication with Nick Worth and his Simtech operation. So there is Alessandro Zanardi running in front of the Dallara. That is, of course, Emanuele Pirro behind the wheel of that car. And the Dallara team, they have retained the use of Nicola Larini next year, but they've also managed to poach Adrian Fernandez from the Aston Martin team, or I should say Eurobra now. They will be Aston Martin next year, as Winkelhock goes up the inside of Adrian Campos in the Fonmetal. He's making his debut with the team as a racer, and he's got a throttle linkage issue. So Adrian Campos up in 11th position, doing a great job. But it looks as though mechanical problems with that car. He's only filling in for Roland Ratzenberger for one race, finally getting his debut, but it looks to me as though he's not going to get to the finish of this one, very sadly, as his teammate Martin Donnelly, who has signed a second year with the Fonmetal team, by the way, he's going to be driving for them in 1992, as Emanuele Pirro drops out of the race in the Dallara. We just saw him a moment ago. So Pirro dropping out of the race. They're dropping like flies here at Monza. The Temple of Speed is really causing agony to the pre-qualifying teams, who are all really struggling. Every single team, it seems, has had some kind of headache in this one. Even Honda, of course, with Naoki Hattori getting a puncture early on. And there is Aguri Suzuki leading the way. That's Zanardi gone off the road. Now, it looks as though he's still got power to his car, and that's why. So the Fonmetal was dawdling on the racing line, and Zanardi had absolutely nowhere to go. Adrian Campos touring in to retire, and Zanardi just skated clean off the road there. So very unfortunate indeed for the Italian. And that really hinders his progress and the team's progress in this race, as Adrian Campos is trying to get the car back to the pits. And he's just missed the pit lane altogether. So very unfortunate indeed for Adrian Campos, as his race now comes to a premature end. While Zanardi goes past the pits, and the recovery of Adrian Campos is underway. So very unfortunate for the Fonmetal team. But Zanardi going well last time out. Unable to this time. Aguri Suzuki continues on his way in the Honda. Now, there's actually a really interesting thing about the Honda. Looking at their pace from practice and looking at their pace in the race, if they manage to get through to the Grand Prix, they will actually have a very comparable car in a straight line around Monza compared to some of the teams in the top 10 of the grid. So expect them to be challenging for points in the Grand Prix if they can get through, because the Honda does look like it's got the legs to score points here. And of course, that is how Honda has set the tone for their man Aguri Suzuki to get a drive with them for next year. Eric Bernard, second position, and Paul Tracy in third, as they work their way through. Fabulous situation for the contenders, and still battling down to the chicane. Very good run for all of the drivers so far in this one. Up to the charge once again. And here's Ricard Rydell dueling away side by side with JJ Leto in the Monteverdi. And Leto's going to get through very nicely indeed there. No problems at all for the Finn to overtake the Swede. Paul Tracy, though, in one of the two Modena Lamborghinis that's running at the sharp end of the dais there. Having a really solid race of it on lap 9 out of 27. Going very strongly indeed as they continue their charge forward. And now Rydell's going to get back on JJ Leto. So the two of them dueling for position. There's still quite a bit to go between these two, and it's quite evenly paced. The tyre wear is definitely going to be quite heavy here at Monza. It really takes its toll. As into the pits comes Bernard. So Bernard is coming to the pits from P2. And that hands it over to Paul Tracy for the time being. And that's the one stop. Everybody now has to take a mandatory pit stop. That was brought in at the Belgian Grand Prix onwards, that every team must now make a mandatory pit stop, and that's to even up the playing field a little bit in pre-qualifying and make the racing just that little bit more dynamic. But they have a window, and they can do it basically any time between lap 9 and lap 18. I mean, it's dependent on which race circuit we go to, but certainly here at Monza, it makes things a little bit more intriguing in terms of the strategy. And a fabulous battle continuing on its way here, as everyone still up the tempo. Aguri Suzuki still looking to sign a contract. Oh, that's Hideki Noda. Now, Hideki Noda has been in discussion with Honda for next year, apparently, after his brilliant performances in 1991 for the AGS team, but he's not going to go any further in this one, and that will temporarily knock AGS out of the Grand Prix, as their man behind him, that is Andy Wallace in the Jordan, will take third position over. So poor Hideki Noda. Not what he wanted at all. Perry McCarthy having had mechanical problems earlier on, and Hideki Noda dropping out of the race in the Duracell AGS. So that's game over for the Japanese driver, who would still dearly love to be in Grand Prix racing next year. And he's already spoken to both Honda and Toyota for opportunities for next year. So a bitter disappointment indeed for Hideki Noda, as he now pulls out of the race. Well, that's AGS's chances gone, certainly for the moment. McCarthy is well out of the top 15, still trying to recover from the earlier problems. As Martin Donnelly in the Fonmetal is peeling into the pits now with an engine problem of his own. So Martin Donnelly in the Fonmetal, now there's smoke coming out of it, but if they can bring that into the pits, switch it off, reset it, reboot it and get back into the race again, then Martin Donnelly is not out of this Grand Prix yet. He was due to come into the pits anyway on low fuel. They've rebooted the engine, and I think he's going to be okay. Certainly looks like a decent pit stop down in pit road now for Martin Donnelly. It drops him down the order, but at least the Fonmetal can keep going. So Paul Tracy, second position at the moment in the Modena Lamborghini. Looks like he won't be driving for the team next year, though. As side by side, we've got the two Aston Martin bound cars. They are both, of course, Eurobruns, with their updated Gulf liveries. They seem to change almost every race now, but the car looks so spectacular in its current guise. But they will have Aston Martin branding for next year, of course, as they become the Aston Martin Racing Team with Gulf backing. Andy Wallace still having a good run. And there's Paul Tracy getting around the returning to the track. Oh, and there's a smoking Modena in front of Alex Zanardi, who goes off the road, and Zanardi's got damage to his front wing as a result, but that's Paul Tracy. So Paul Tracy in the Modena, running in second place. More problems for the Canadian. So I'm afraid the Modena Lamborghini is really going to struggle to get through to the Grand Prix. Mind you, Eric Bernard is still running in the race, and obviously he's going to drop back. But that really benefits the drivers behind. It certainly benefits Eurobrun for the moment, and for Renault as well. And oh dear, well that's got really bad. Fire comes onto the back of Paul Tracy's car. Now, Paul Tracy desperately trying to get that car back to the pits, but as a result, he's going to be dropping a massive load of oil all over the car. So, a very tricky situation then, as now Paul Tracy has got big fire. Now, this is a little bit irresponsible from the Canadian, because obviously he'll be dropping oil all over the circuit. So, a big issue there for the Canadian, who pulls aside, and Andy Wallace is going to get around him and into what is currently second position in the Jordan. So Tracy is desperately trying to coax it back to the pits. So a tough situation for poor Tracy as he brings the car to a standstill. Through goes Cheever, through goes Hill, through goes De Cesaris, and of course through goes his teammate Eric Bernard. So Paul Tracy, the Canadian, out here at Monza. He's now got to rely on his teammate. So could be very interesting. But there is Eddie Cheever, who is all but signed up next year to go back to America and race in IndyCar. Apparently he's got a really competitive drive lined up for next year. It's all set to be announced very soon, apparently. So a very exciting situation for all of the contenders. Andrea De Cesaris running out a bit wide. So a very interesting situation for all of the contenders. So down the back straight. All going good at the moment for the Coloni team. Their upgrades definitely seem to have worked. The cars are a much quicker car. So yeah, here's the opportunity as Adrian Fernandez is getting held up there behind the two Reals of Rydell and McNish. Zanardi moves aside. Oof, that was very close for Zanardi. He's had all sorts of dramas in this one. He's already had two big offs. So it's going to be an interesting one as they continue on. Suzuki, Wallace, Cheever, then Hill and De Cesaris, Bernard, Johansson, Leto, Rydell and McNish. That's the top 10 at the present moment. Agari Suzuki still going strong as he approaches his single pit stop. And the Honda crew, they're about to make a big launch for next year. They've actually had to ask special permission, the Honda team, to run Bridgestone logos on their car for this weekend, even though they're not running Bridgestone logos, because the livery is a tribute to the Japanese racing world. So Andy Wallace, second position. Cheever in third, Hill in fourth, and Bernard in fifth position. And then De Cesaris, Johansson, Leto, Rydell, and Fernandez. Suzuki coming into the pits then. And for the last time this year, you'll expect the team to look very different next time out in Portugal, but they're about to make a big announcement as to how things are going to look for next year. Suzuki in the pits, and he'll hand the car back onto the circuit. But I think he's going to hand the lead to Andy Wallace for the time being, unless Wallace comes into the pits on the same lap. But the Jordan was pretty dead set to go into the lead of this race as he passes. No, Wallace is coming in as well. So Wallace will come into the pits at the same time. So Cheever, I think, is just going to skate through. Oh no, he's not quite going to skate through. So Cheever is there in second place in the Eurobrun with the Gulf colours. So it'll continue a fascinating situation as Alex Zanardi pushes very hard side by side. It'll be a very tricky one down to the braking zone. And through they come, out of the hairpin. Still pushing. Roberto Moreno in the Coloni, looking for a point or two. It's also been announced this week that next year there is actually going to be a separate championship for the teams in pre-qualifying, for which there will be prize money at the end of the year that they can add to their budget, which will obviously help them to improve and get faster for the following season. So there will be some prize money handed out to the top 5 teams, I'm told, for 1992 in pre-qualifying. Perry McCarthy still dueling away, trying to get past his fellow Brit, Alan McNish. Perry McCarthy really enjoying being behind the wheel of a racing car again. Gets the move up the inside, up into P10. After having mechanical problems earlier on, McCarthy definitely bouncing back in style. And Moreno trying to make the move on the inside of McNish. Well, yeah, he had to bail out of that one. I think that was just a little bit too eager from the Brazilian. So Roberto Moreno still chasing after a top 10 finish. But Suzuki, after the pit stop, still in the lead of the race as Damon Hill in the Renault comes into the pits. Now, there's all sorts of wild rumours about Renault for next year. Apparently, they're going to be courting several big names. Apparently, they've reached out to Ayrton Senna. They've reached out to Damon Hill again, of course, because he's been driving with them this year. Even the likes of Thierry Boutsen, Riccardo Patrese and Eddie Irvine are all in the mix for race drives at Renault. Not surprisingly, of course, because Eddie Irvine won the last Grand Prix at Spa. So Irvine still a little bit shocked that Eddie Irvine hasn't got a race drive lined up for next year, as up the inside comes Fernandez to just squeak ahead of Damon Hill for the time being. But of course, there's still a long way to go, and Damon Hill's going to be on fresher rubber than Adrian Fernandez. So that battle is still going to be pretty intense. Lap 16 out of 27, still a fair way to go. in this pre-qualifying race, but certainly enough for things to continue to be scrapped away for as Damon Hill makes the big blast at the inside. That Renault is getting better all the time, and he dives through Damon Hill and gets the move there on Fernandez to move up into 7th position once again. So a good run there from the British driver, and still plenty to do as into the pits comes Eddie Cheever from P2 in the Eurobrun. As Suzuki goes out and sets the fastest lap of the race on his first lap on fresh tyres, a 1:23.0. So all going well then for the Japanese driver as into the pits for his one and only stop with 11 laps to go comes Eddie Cheever, and he hands the podium, the top 3, to Honda, Modena and Coloni. So that'll be fascinating to get Coloni into the Grand Prix again with their Subaru engines, if they can manage to get there for the first time. Stefan Johansson in his Renault coming into the pits behind Eddie Cheever, so they're both making stops at this point. And they're getting so much closer. They're basically just spending 1991 as a building and learning year. They believe that in 1992 they're going to have the most powerful engine on the grid. And that'll be fascinating to see them try and fight their way into the Grand Prix with that each time. But it's powerful, but it's got to be reliable as well. That's the key factor. So Andrea De Cesaris going strong. They also made a U-turn on their plans for 1992, the Renault team. They were supplying customers, and they've decided that for 1992 they want to be world champion on their own, so they're not going to have any customers use their engines for 1992. Whether that changes in future years, we don't know, but it was a bit of a U-turn by the Renault outfit. So it'll be fascinating to see what they do. It was a bit of a shock from the Renault president. But team principal Lewis Passendale is essentially just following the directives of the Renault outfit. So through we come again. And Eric Bernard now settling into that second position. De Cesaris pits in the Coloni, so that's going to inherit third position for the Jordan team. Andy Wallace, they're going to get back into third place, and that really helps them on their crusade of getting into the Grand Prix here at Monza. Certainly going to be a very different bunch of teams that gets through this time if this race is anything to go by. But Andy Wallace passes the pits, gets into third, and that's a big plume of smoke coming out of the Renault. That is Damon Hill. Still the Renault not quite up to scratch yet. It's faster and faster every time, but it's just not reliable yet. We're going to spend an awful lot of time over the winter. They're going to have to fix that, because it's their one Achilles heel at the moment. They're definitely quick enough to get into Grand Prix. They're just not quick enough to stay there for very long in those positions. So definitely an awful lot of money and an awful lot of resource has got to go into the Renault reliability. Well, Damon's still going. I'm not sure he knows that the car has got smoke billowing out of the back of it. De Cesaris does. You can barely see where he's going. And McCarthy is there right behind De Cesaris as well. So Damon's finally realised, he's twigged what's going on. And McCarthy is going to charge his way past De Cesaris as Damon Hill gets out of the way. So that is great news for McCarthy if he can get through. He's done it. So McCarthy through into P6. And for my money, that's put AGS back into a potential contention to get into the race. Now, Damon Hill has been able to go down the short stretch here, but he hasn't really been able to pull off the racetrack. There's not a lot of distance between the circuit itself and the marshal post. So Damon Hill has been having to be rescued there very quickly indeed. Fortunately, they've got the crane there, and it doesn't cause too much of an issue, but that's certainly something they need to be mindful of in future. Suzuki out of the Variante Ascari and on the way down the straight towards the Tamburello. So a fabulous run then as the drivers continue to push on. Here's Aguri Suzuki leading the way from Eric Bernard and Andy Wallace. Then Eddie Cheever in fourth. So 4 different teams in the top 4. Adrian Fernandez in 5th position, and hunting him down rapidly now is Andrea De Cesaris back in front of Perry McCarthy. So the two of them have been swapping positions for quite some time as they basically utilise each other's slipstream. So great to see them racing between the two of them. This race has absolutely flown by, it has to be said. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens in the Italian Grand Prix itself. It'll be a fascinating battle when we get there. But a really exciting run as Andy Wallace in the Jordan comes through. Looking good. Look at the gap he's got over the Eurobruns. This must be giving Toby Smith some confidence. Provided, of course, that Andy Wallace can stay there for the remaining 8 laps of the Grand Prix qualifying session. Pre-qualifying, I should say. There is discussion of giving this a slightly better name for next year, but I think that'll come to it when the time is right. So Eric Bernard having a great run in P2. Aguri Suzuki continuing on his way. And laps one of the Monteverdes. That's JJ Leto that he's just lapped there, having already lapped Alex Zanardi a little while ago. But certainly the top three looking pretty steady. Honda, Lamborghini and Jordan looking to be the three teams that would go through to the Italian Grand Prix a little later on. Certainly looking very handy, those three teams. But Suzuki, Bernard and Andy Wallace running in the top three. Then Eddie Cheever and Adrian Fernandez in the two Eurobruns. They're just sitting there waiting for one of the big three teams up front to drop out of the race. So it'll be fascinating to see how this all continues to play out. But it really will be an exceptional tussle for position as the drivers continue to quest their way around this fabulous course. There's nothing quite like the Temple of Speed. It's an absolutely phenomenal racetrack. So still they duel away down the stretch. And this is a really exciting opportunity now for Aguri Suzuki to put the Honda team back into the race again. They missed out last time, of course. Satoru Nakajima had a crack at Spa. Interestingly, he has actually signed a deal to race for footwork for next year, which is certainly strengthening the rumours that Honda would be supplying footwork with Mugen engines for next year. As obviously Satoru Nakajima is on the employees of Honda. He's actually one of their main ambassadors. He's coming out of retirement to drive for the footwork team. He could end up being one of the youngest Grand Prix drivers on the grid next season. Ironically, considering that there's another young Japanese talent, 16-year-old Tononosuke Takagi, who has apparently signed a deal with Lola, which will have PIAA backing next year, which is apparently a sponsor of Tononosuke Takagi. But he can't race next year straight away because, of course, he's only 16 years of age. Tononosuke Takagi, which is incredibly young, but he'll still get his opportunity to work with the team and be in the cars next year. So he'll test for the team. Whether he'll race for the team, it's a completely different matter. And that's something I think that the teams will have to vote on. So Larini still having a good battle down the stretch, going wheel to wheel with the sole remaining Renault. That's Stefan Johansson behind the wheel of that car. Great experience behind the wheel of that particular machine. But Aguri Suzuki still having a good run as he leads Stefan Johansson in 10th position, trying to make his overtaking opportunity. Apparently, according to sources, we are being told that Takagi will actually be 18 by March in 1992. So that will be very closely monitored, of course, by the whole team and by the RRML board. It might be that he misses the first race of the season at the first race of the year in South Africa. Adrian Fernandez has a puncture. Something's gone wrong, and unfortunately it's dropped Fernandez out of this race. So Fernandez is gone, and that's very unfortunate indeed for him. So very disappointing indeed to see him drop out of the race. So Adrian Fernandez going no further, but it's definitely going to be a tricky one. I was actually incorrect. I said that it was going to be the first race of the season was going to be at Calame next year. It's not. It's going to take place at Interlagos in Brazil. So definitely going to be an intriguing battle. But not at the moment for Adrian Fernandez, the Mexican dropping out of the race there with a puncture as Andy Wallace continues on his way in the sole remaining Jordan. There is now a sole remaining Eurobrun just 8 seconds behind him. And he doesn't want that car to get anywhere near him in the final 5 laps, as that will really ruin the day for Jordan. But Aguri Suzuki in that rather beautiful livery of the Honda this time. It's almost exactly what the Lola is going to end up looking like next year, but with subtle adjustments. Nicola Larini still going well in 9th place as they come off the turn. So still the battle rages on as Nicola Larini still having a very solid race of it, continuing on his way up towards the Variante della Roggia. Currently in 9th place, not a bad run for the Dallara, but they're going to have a very interesting battle next year. Oh, and Larini's pulling off the road. So something has clearly broken on the car. It's a gearbox failure. He just turned in, and it just seemed like the gearbox just went into neutral. So a broken gearbox puts the other Dallara out of the race then. Nicola Larini, of course, staying with the team next year, joined by Fernandez. So the two most recent retirements are going to be the two Dallara drivers next year. So very unfortunate indeed to see them both drop out of the race. And now we watch Winkelhock going wheel to wheel with Stefan Johansson. Johansson goes through very easily, and that's why. It looks like Joe Winkelhock is dropping out of the race in the closing stages. As he now has what looks like an oil leak. That's certainly what's coming up on the electronic dash. But Aguri Suzuki still running very well at the front of the race. 23 seconds clear of Eric Bernard. That gives us some indication as to the sort of pace we should see from Honda in the Grand Prix itself. But the RRML is quite keen to encourage teams that go through from pre-qualifying that they are not going to be sitting at the back of the grid in next year's races. They want to get through and start challenging for points and even podiums in next year's race, just to give them a chance to be ultra competitive. They want them to mix it with the big teams if they get an opportunity to. That's what makes it's what's going to make Formula One a lot more competitive in years to come. There is the full-blown Zach Speed BMW engine, and Winkelhock cannons off the road at the Della Roggia, parks it in the gravel. It's game over. Fortunately, the marshal puts out the fire very quickly. So Joachim Winkelhock out of this race at Monza. 3 laps to go. Oh, and that's Aguri Suzuki! Aguri Suzuki goes off the road and spins! He spins with 3 laps to go! My goodness! Well, Aguri Suzuki has spun the Honda out of the lead. Now, if he can get going again, he should still be able to get through and pre-qualify. The car is beat, and that's Bernard going through. So Bernard in the Modena Lamborghini gets through. No problems at all for him to take the lead of the race. So Suzuki reverses, gets back going again. Well, that is not going to be particularly positive as far as the Honda management are concerned. Suzuki trying to justify his place in the team for 1992. And dropping it while leading is not going to help at all. Leto, meanwhile, going to battle with Roberto Moreno. So, fascinating challenge for everybody. But certainly for the time being, that is not what they wanted to see. Aguri Suzuki recovers in second place, but with 2 laps to go, he has thrown away the lead of pre-qualifying, with Eric Bernard now having taken the lead of it. And so Aguri Suzuki is now doing his best. Ricard Rydell! That's a big moment into the Rettifilio. He actually got very airborne indeed there, Ricard Rydell. He would have landed rather awkwardly as Eric Bernard goes through. See, I wonder if this has got something to do with the oil that went down earlier on. It's going to cause a lot of problems as Ricard Rydell tries to recover back onto the circuit again. There's a lot of other cars around. There goes Andy Wallace through into position. So Rydell recovers and rejoins at the tail end of the field. There is Andy Wallace, 3rd position in the Jordan, hoping that he can try and catch up a little bit to Aguri Suzuki. I think he might have thought that was his chance to guarantee his place in. As Andrea De Cesaris is slowing in the Coloni in 5th position. Don't tell me he's about to park it. He is indeed. Well, that unfortunately means that Coloni are definitely not going through. De Cesaris might have had a shot at it. But with Moreno being down in 8th position now and De Cesaris out of the race, with 2 laps to go, surely Coloni are not going to get through to the Italian Grand Prix. But Modena and the Lamborghini brand are going to do so on home turf. That is very exciting news for the Lamborghini squad. The Modena team, as they are actually known. There is a likelihood that the team will be renamed Martini Lamborghini next year. So the Modena name would basically be dropped from the lineup. And Ricard Rydell going slowly through the Tamburello. Is he about to park it on the final lap of racing? He makes it very difficult for Eddie Cheever to get around him. And I think Ricard Rydell is going to peel off the circuit and retire. Indeed, he hasn't quite got the pace to even cross the line to finish the lap. So the Swedish driver, Ricard Rydell, drops out of what was 11th position. Perry McCarthy going past him in the AGS. It's a very near miss for Perry McCarthy, actually. He could have had a chance there to go through to the Grand Prix. And I think had he not had his mechanical problems earlier, he probably would have done. Meanwhile, Johansson is battling away with... Is that Zanardi? It is. Zanardi, who is a lap down, don't forget. Still dueling away. He doesn't want to lose out here. So he's trying to showcase what he would have done had he not had his problems earlier on. He dices up the inside to retake the place on the road from Stefan Johansson. But the victory is going to go the way of the Modena Lamborghini. So Andy Wallace is there in third position, Suzuki in second. Here comes Eric Bernard, though, in the Modena Lamborghini. He will take the victory in pre-qualifying. A great run from Eric Bernard. He wins, and that puts the Modena Lamborghini team on home soil. The crowd has gone absolutely ballistic. They love Ferrari, but they also love Lamborghini. So for Lamborghini to win at Monza in pre-qualifying, that's a great start to the weekend for the Italian hopeful. So Bernard, Suzuki and Andy Wallace. It's going to be Lamborghini, Honda and Jordan that go through to the Italian Grand Prix. Excellent work from the team. And it wasn't that long ago since Jordan obviously announced they're going to be linking up with the American Penske Chevrolet outfit. So it's going to be Jordan Penske Chevrolet in Grand Prix next year. That's really going to strengthen the team. Andy Wallace will be part of that, and apparently he's being joined by Michael Andretti, the IndyCar sensation and son of Mario. So that is fabulous news. And it's going to see a real American name back in Grand Prix racing again. As across the line, we've got Johansson just bringing the Renault home. That's important for Renault to get at least one car home in the top 6. That's really going to help in terms of their development. Johansson will have given them an awful lot of food for thought coming into the next rounds of the championship. Next time out at Estoril, who knows what the Renault team can produce. Aguri Suzuki feeling a little bit sheepish after his mistake. But Eric Bernard still wins it from Modena Lamborghini, and Suzuki was still second, so they still managed to get through. It didn't change much, just the result of the win, but it is Lamborghini, Honda and Jordan that go through. Eddie Cheever and Eurobrun just missing out on this occasion. Perry McCarthy in the AGS, Stefan Johansson in the Renault, Donnelly in the Fonmetal, Moreno 8th in the Coloni, 9th is the Monteverdi of JJ Leto, and 10th is Alan McNish in the Real. 10 different teams in the top 10 places. Doesn't happen very often. We had Zanardi cross the line in 11th, then De Cesaris, Rydell and Winkelhock all dropped out in the closing stages. The Rini, Fernandez and Damon Hill out. So too was Paul Tracy, Hideki Noda, Adrian Campos, Pirro, Byrne, Comas, Wendlinger, Pierluigi Martini and Naoki Hattori, the first retirement in the Honda with a puncture. And then, of course, the fastest man of the race, Aguri Suzuki, by almost 3/4 of a second over Bernard, Hattori, McCarthy, Tracy and Noda. Fabulous stuff, though, from our race victor, Eric Bernard, who was able to come through and put the Modena Lamborghini team into the Grand Prix grid. A fabulous start to proceedings. We'll go straight into the Grand Prix, no waiting around, and it's going to be a very interesting one indeed here at Monza. Pole position goes the way of Ayrton Senna, but look how close Nigel Mansell is this time. Only 0.2 of a second back in the new improved Ferrari. Then it's an all-Tyrrell row 2. Frentzen and Barrichello ahead of Michael Schumacher, championship leader, and Alessandro Nannini in 6th position on the grid. Then it's Gerhard Berger and Gilles de Ferran in the second Williams. Aguri Suzuki way up in 9th for the Honda team. Derek Warwick 10th for Lotus. Then Patrese and Alboreto in their Ligier and Lotus cars respectively. Stefano Modena doing a good job for Lola ahead of Martin Brundle in the all-new look Benetton. Mika Hakkinen in the Brabham alongside Eddie Irvine in the Ligier way down in P16. Gujamin and Hattori, and then Marc Blundell in the second Benetton, and Luca Badua making his Grand Prix debut for the Arrows team alongside Arie Luyendyk, and he's actually out-qualified him. Manuel Reuter gets his first Grand Prix in a Brabham, Paul Tracy and Eric Bernard, and then at the back of the grid it's Andy Wallace and Carl Wendlinger in their Jordans. So we're getting ready to go racing. Senna versus Mansell. This is really starting to become one of the top rivalries of 1991. Mansell have already had their run-ins in the past, of course, but the Tyrrells of Frentzen and Barrichello right up close. Schumacher in the Ferrari and Nannini in the McLaren. And we will go racing at Monza. A great start over the front of the field. Everybody getting a reasonable launch forward. But a terrific start from Nigel Mansell. He's actually beaten Senna off the line. This is great news for him. And look at Suzuki charging forward in the Honda. It's Mansell, Senna and Suzuki. 3rd position for the Honda talent. That is amazing from Aguri Suzuki. Talk about determined. He wants to show them, look, I am good enough to race for Honda next year. I'm going for it. So he's going all out to go for it. Aguri Suzuki pushing hard. And he's actually going wheel to wheel with Ayrton Senna. Surely Suzuki can't get the moves on Senna. He's certainly having a think about it. Good for him. The Japanese driver really stamping his authority on this one. So Mansell leads. Senna second. Suzuki. Then the two Tyrrells of Frentzen and Barrichello. Then Schumacher, Nannini, De Ferran in the second Williams, Warwick and Alboreto in the 2 Lotus cars. It's looking likely that neither driver is going to be in the Lotus next year. We know that Marc Blundell is going to be in one of them. But there's even rumours that Ayrton Senna could end up being in the other Lotus, depending on whether or not he decides to rejoin the Williams team, Ligier have apparently put in a bid for the next year. Oh, that's Manuel Reuter, and also off. That's one of the Ligier cars. Is that Eddie Irvine off on the first lap? Well, that would be disastrous. But let's have a look at how it happened. So Manuel Reuter battling away with the Lolas out in front of him. Oh, that's Eddie Irvine diving through up the inside. Oh, and he's hit the side of Manuel Reuter. That's bitterly disappointing for Irvine, the man who won the Belgian Grand Prix last time out. And look, rejoins Manuel Reuter right in the path of one of the modern Lamborghinis, who flies off the road. That's Bernard. So the winner of pre-qualifying, Eric Bernard, having to recover, and so too is Eddie Irvine. Well, that's rather embarrassing for the winner last time out at Spa, Belgian Grand Prix winner Eddie Irvine. Now spun to the back of the grid. Now here comes Derek Warwick. See battles wheel to wheel with Gilles de Ferran. Now there's rumours that Derek Warwick is actually going to go sports car racing next year rather than Grand Prix racing, as he now tucks in behind Michael Schumacher, who has just lost out to Alessandro Nannini in the McLaren. So Nannini has got his way through. Great battles going on here so far, as the field is really starting to mix it up. Apologies for the sound quality when we go on board. It got very loud there for a moment. The director's just been able to turn down the audio a little bit. And how about this for a battle? Fredson is coming back at a Goody Suzuki. Heinzhard Fredson, who of course also has a Honda engine, don't forget. Although they're not going to have Honda engines next year. They're going to be Repco engines in the Tyrrell for next year. That's a real return to Grand Prix racing for the Repco name. They will carry the Repco name. And their partners next year, Arrows, are going to have the Nismo name, because they'll basically be bought out by the Nissan team. So rather than have the Nissan name in Grand Prix racing straight away, it's going to be Repco and Nissan in the backs of those cars next year. It'll be Arrows Nismo and Red Bull Tyrrell Repco. It'll be hard ones to say in commentary next year. I'll do my best. Suzuki having another crack at Fredson. Fredson having got through past Suzuki. Suzuki wants another go at it. This is great for Honda. Battling for the podium in the Grand Prix. Not in pre-qualifying, in the Grand Prix. So Mansell is leading, Senna in second, and Aguri Suzuki on his return to Honda is third position. Now surely that's a proper advert to team boss Andrew Sampson, sorry. Frenson diving up the inside. He gets back into third position. But surely for team boss Andrew Sampson, he's got to be looking at Aguri Suzuki's performance here as a real indication. Well, we cannot really afford to let him go, because he's absolutely a dark horse and a real secret weapon in that Honda. Certainly helping to drive the team forward. Michele Alboreto going wheel to wheel with his teammate. And who's that getting involved? That's Gerhard Berger in the McLaren, who's had a really difficult start. A lot of slipstreaming here at Monza. Is Berger going to get past both Lotuses in one go? He is! Gerhard Berger gets past both Warwick and Alboreto in one fell swoop. So that's Berger up to 9th after a difficult start to the race. And now Warwick's trying to shake off his teammate Michele Alboreto. Apparently the chemistry between these two isn't fantastic. Both of them obviously feeling that they could be Grand Prix winners. Alboreto's the one that's actually managed to do so. Warwick has still yet to win his first Grand Prix. Schumacher, side by side with Alessandro Nannini. The Italian and the German battle away with each other, and Schumacher's going to get the upper hand. The Ferrari fans love that. One Ferrari leading, the other one in P6 now, having got past Alessandro Nannini. So Mansell, Senna, Frenson, Suzuki and Barrichello. Now Barrichello gets to move up the inside. The young Brazilian doing a sensational job. And it's no wonder that he has managed to extend his deal with Red Bull Tyrrell for next season. So Rubens Barrichello, very excited to be with the team again next year. Could be a fascinating off-season to see how well that car develops. Nannini still pushing with the Ferrari. That is Michael Schumacher, the German, who leads the championship, of course, here at Monza. So the Ferrari fans, the Tifosi, are very excited because Ferrari come here as Constructors' Championship leaders. And they've got a really incredible chance to win on home soil. Nannini battling away here with Schumacher still. Remember all those days last year when Ferrari were just nowhere from the pace at all, and now they are up at the front end of the team, right at the front end of the grid. There's Senna in the Williams Porsche. That Porsche engine still very unreliable, but very rapid when it gets the chance to be. Nannini back on the inside of Schumacher again. Schumacher absolutely determined to keep him at bay this time. And there's all sorts of wild rumours surrounding Senna and where he'll be next year. He has shaken off all rumours. He hasn't announced he's going anywhere yet. And apparently he's turned down all offers. He was given an offer to remain with Williams next year. He's turned that down. Benetton hinted that they were after him, but then they have signed both world champion from last year, Mika Hakkinen, and the Scottish driver, David Coulthard. Now, that doesn't mean they haven't given up on Senna, because obviously Coulthard could still end up being a reserve or young driver, but they've already signed 2 drivers for next year, that's for sure. Berger going wheel to wheel with de Ferran in the second Williams. Now, de Ferran has been confirmed at Williams next year. Again, we don't know whether that's going to be in a reserve role or whether it's going to be a full-time role, because at the moment he's obviously settled in well and Williams are happy to give him another chance in 92. Mansell and Schumacher aren't moving from Ferrari next year either. So Derek Warwick hunting down Riccardo Patrese. Riccardo Patrese looking for a race drive for next year apparently. So too, of course, technically is Derek Warwick, although there's a lot of speculation as to whether he'll be in Grand Prix racing next year. He might well be in sports cars. There's going to be a real shuffle of the decks in Grand Prix racing in 1992, that's for sure. Not at Tyrrell though, because it'll be Frentzen and Barrichello. So at Ferrari, McLaren and Tyrrell, there is no change to the driver lineup for 1992. And there are rumours circulating Senna, but the experts believe that Senna will join Williams again next year, unless of course he can be swayed away by Lotus or by potentially Benetton or even by Ligier with their all-new Equipe Bugatti Ligier. That's a fascinating programme for next year. We're going to hear a lot about that in the course of the off-season. And even Renault have stepped up the money. They think they've got a claim for Senna. Oh, Suzuki's slowing! Suzuki is slowing after his brilliant start to the Grand Prix. Aguri Suzuki. Oh, and that's the Lotus smoking as well. So that's 2 on the same lap, I'm afraid. So Aguri Suzuki coming to a stop, and it looks as though Alboreto in the Lotus is doing the same thing. So Aguri Suzuki and the Honda pulling off. Lotus have just announced, by the way, that they're not going to be having Renault engines next year. They're going to be having Toyota engines in 1991. And that has actually put Aguri Suzuki on their radar for next year if he doesn't get the Honda drive. Apparently reports out of Japan is that they would go for Suzuki as a good option. And certainly after a race drive like this here in Monza, that would certainly put him in the coattails of a chance to do so. Here's Senna in the Williams. As I said before, I hadn't quite finished my point about Senna earlier, but Williams have courted him, of course, to stay. But then there's also rumours from Lotus as Alboreto is about to pull off in one. That won't give Senna any confidence to stay with them for next year. Or to join them next year, I should say. Benetton have looked into it, Ligier have looked into it, Renault have looked into it, and apparently even Penske in IndyCar. They would quite like to make him a Brazilian super team alongside Emerson Fittipaldi in IndyCar next year. Well, that could be something. As Stefano Modena battles away on the far side of the course. And unfortunately for Michele Alboreto, he's out of the race now in the Lotus. We saw him pull off the road. So that's game over for Alboreto. But Nigel Mansell leads in the Ferrari. He says this is his best chance yet of becoming world champion, and he does not want to let this slip away. That's Brundle! That's Brundle in the updated Benetton. I say updated, but it certainly hasn't been... I mean, it's got a new look, but I'm afraid the Benetton, it's a little bit more traditional in its appearance with a little bit more support from Apple moving forward, but I'm afraid that particular Apple is a bit char-grilled. I hate to say it, but the Benetton Apple has crumbled on the final turn. So Martin Brundle, who is joining Brabham for next year, by the way, he is out of this race. Very unfortunate indeed for Martin Brundle. He will join the Brabham Mercedes team for next year. That's an exciting new venture. Apparently there's a technical link-up with the Sauber Mercedes outfit in Group C. So there'll be opportunities for the Grand Prix drivers to go and do Le Mans for Sauber Mercedes next year. That'll be exciting for them. But Brabham will have the Mercedes manufacturer sewn up there. Apparently there's even discussion of Mercedes taking over the team in future years. But I think that's a wild rumour coming out of the German national press. Certainly the Brabham name will be on the grid next year. Karl Wendlinger diving up the inside to make an overtaking move. So not bad indeed for the Austrian, as Paul Tracy is duelling in the middle, and he's actually battling with Mika Hakkinen. Now Hakkinen is going to be driving for Benetton next year. So Mika Häkkinen decided he'd had enough of Brabham. He's had 2 good years with them, but he wanted to move on, and so he's going to be joining the Benetton Porsche outfit for next year. And that's a really exciting lineup change, actually. There's Häkkinen with Porsche engines. He'll have the same engines as Ayrton Senna, and a lot of people say he is just as quick as the Brazilian. So Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari, extending the gap over Senna. This is a bit of a surprise, actually, to see Ferrari getting ahead of Senna and pulling away. I wonder if Senna is on a one-stop showdown. I think he might have an opportunity here to be on a one-stopper. As Mansell comes through. He's slowing! The race leader, Nigel Mansell, in the Ferrari is slowing! That is tragedy at Monza on lap 9. As Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari is slowing, and it's game over. Oh, agony at Monza for Ferrari and for Nigel Mansell. It's game over, and that puts him out of the Italian Grand Prix. Devastating bad luck. The Tifosi absolutely dumbfounded. It was looking so good for them coming into this one. So good. But I'm afraid it's all gone. It's all gone wrong for Nigel Mansell and the Ferrari team. So, very disappointing indeed. Just getting a reminder from my runner that Derek Warwick did actually win a Grand Prix. He won at Jerez last season, of course, in 1990. So, there's the correction. Derek Warwick did finally get his first Grand Prix win as Mark Blundell goes wheel to wheel in the Benetton. As round the outside, Eddie Irvine gets him. Wow, that's very impressive from Irvine around the Parabolica. Well, if anybody was ever thinking about Eddie Irvine as a prospective driver for next year, that certainly reminds people what he can do. But there is your winner at Spain last year, Derek Warwick, battling away for victory here at Monza. He's currently running in 8th place. And the Lotus, which will have Toyota engines for next year, apparently the Castrol colours will look very different indeed for next season, now that there's going to be a Toyota link-up. Gilles de Ferran going wheel to wheel with Alessandro Nannini in the McLaren. Berger having already got through, and Nannini now having a go himself. Alessandro Nannini doing his best to put on a bit of a show. And that's one of the Arrows cars in trouble. That's Arie Luyendyk. So Arie Luyendyk with a few more Campari logos on the car this weekend. Certainly more prominent on the rear wing. Apparently Campari are going to be a big part of the identity of the Arrows team next year. So very unfortunate. As Paul Tracy pulls off in the Lamborghini as well. So very unfortunate there for the Lamborghini of Paul Tracy. He retires. So Luyendyk out, Tracy out, both on the same lap. And with 10 laps completed, we've only got about 20 cars still running in this race. So again, Monza proving to be high attrition. So Senna is now the leader of the Italian Grand Prix in front of this man, Frentzen, who is still giving him plenty of aggro. Heinz-Harald Frentzen senses that the Tyrrell team could actually win the Italian Grand Prix here. And so he is pushing like crazy. On the pit wall, team principal Sam Hall is absolutely tapping his toes, rather agitated. As Alessandro Nannini now makes his bid to close up and pass on Gilles de Ferran. De Ferran doing exactly what he should be doing and slamming the door shut in Alessandro Nannini's face. He's going very well indeed. Still trying to make good work of things. As Senna comes across the line again. Now, the McLaren team have already announced that Berger and Nannini will continue on for next year. And Ayrton Senna was actually quite surprised. Apparently he wanted to have a chat with team principal Dave Goddard about the 1992 season. So it could be interesting to see if anything develops from that desire. Frentzen in second position in the Red Bull Tyrrell. The car that will have Repco engines in the back of that machine next year. That's going to be quite the challenge for Tyrrell, but they wanted to build something that was in-house. They wanted to have something that was very much their own product. So they've gone with Repco for next year, which is going to be owned by Nissan Motorsport. So it's essentially a Tyrrell Nissan, if you like, but they're badging the engines Repco in deference to Sir Jack Brabham and Denny Hulme, who were champions in Grand Prix racing with the Repco engine in 1966 and 1967. So there's a little bit of a reboot coming from those two cars. as Nannini tries again on the Brazilian Gil de Ferran and doesn't make it through. So Senna still going strong here. Down the straight up to the first corner. Nannini looking for an opportunity. And chopping across is Gil de Ferran. So it'll be fascinating to see how it continues as they come through once again. Up on the far side of the course. We'll get to see what Senna can do from the front end of the grid. Now, Frenson's caught him up. The gap is down to 1.1 seconds. So Frenson is giving Senna a hard time. I wonder if Senna is on a one-stop strategy here, because Frenson is definitely pushing him very hard indeed at this early stage of the Grand Prix. Berger's coming to the pits. Right, so Berger at the end of lap 12 has come in the McLaren. Now that suggests that there's going to be an interesting one as Wallace gets a very easy move there on Carl Wendlinger. So is that team tactics for Jordan, or has Carl Wendlinger got a problem? He certainly had a problem in pre-qualifying. I wonder if that oil leak that caused the problem is bringing him in. Yeah, it's bringing him in. He's got a throttle issue this time. But coming into the pits gives him a chance to investigate it and have a look. So Wendlinger will drop to the back of the field, but as far as Jordan are concerned, that's perfectly fine because they can have a look at the car, they can work on it, and they can send him back out again. As into the pits comes Frenson. There we go. So that is about right for the two stoppers. So Frenson comes into the pit in the Red Bull Tyrrell. He was right behind Senna. He actually had him in the tow. So this is going to be interesting for Frenson. They've got to play the long game here on a two-stop strategy. Schumacher goes past the pits. Barrichello goes past the pits. And I think the Ferran and Nannini should do as well. 9.3 for Frenson. So that is a long fuel stop. So it looks like he can go slightly further into the second part of the Grand Prix. As Rubens Barrichello now takes over third position behind the German talent Michael Schumacher, who leads the championship in his Ferrari in 1991. Supreme talent, still only 22 years of age, Michael Schumacher. Riccardo Patrese in the Ligier having a bit of a hiccup. Still looking for his first win of the season for Ligier. All sorts of rumours surrounding Ligier. Apparently they are approaching Patrese, Senna and Thierry Boutsen for next year. Thierry Boutsen, of course, is still sat on the sidelines waiting for his ban to finish. It won't finish until after the Portuguese Grand Prix at Estoril, which is the next race in the season. So Boutsen will be back in the car again in time for the Spanish Grand Prix at Catalunya, the brand new circuit that has been built just outside Barcelona, which will host the Spanish Grand Prix this year. Apparently next year it's between Estoril and it was between Estoril and Jerez for who got the nod. For which race venue, I should say, got the nod for next year, as Mika Hakkinen still battling away with Naoki Hattori in the Honda, and he's got through. So nicely done. I can tell you it was actually Estoril that won out in the battle between Estoril and Jerez for next year, although Jerez is actually being touted as one of the testing venues for Grand Prix races in 1992. Now there's a yellow flag. That's Manuel Reuter. So that's Reuter in the Brabham. Now what's happened to Manuel Reuter? Did he just lose it on his own, or was there a mechanical difficulty? Oh, there was a car spinning in front of him. That's Blundell in the Benetton. So Blundell in the Benetton spun in front of Manuel Reuter. Reuter had to take avoiding action. Not really a lot that could be done about that. So let's have a look at how Mark Blundell lost it in the Apple Benetton. Whoops, he just carried far too much speed into the Variante Ascari, and Reuter didn't have a lot of time to react to it. Fortunately, Berger did. So Berger having come into the pits recently for his first stop. So Manuel Reuter now facing the wrong way. Blundell obviously facing the wrong way as well. So Blundell gets going. Reuter is going to have to try and face the right way again in the Brabham. He's almost got himself bogged down in the gravel down there. And he manages to get going at the tail end of the field in the car that's going to be a Brabham Mercedes next season. So Schumacher now up to second place in the Grand Prix for Ferrari. Look at that. Tracy, Leindijk, Mansell, Brundle, Alboreto and Suzuki all out of the Italian Grand Prix on lap 15 out of 53. As Naoki Hattori now comes into the pits for the Honda team. All sorts of shuffling of the decks for 1992, which is fast approaching, of course. There is Ayrton Senna, who could easily be leading the championship with all the points he's lost through mechanical failures in 1991. He just wants to spend the end of this season getting back into the title fight. That's what he is quoted as saying. He wants to push the Williams Porsche team into the points for the rest of the season. He knows it's going to be a season of attrition in terms of points scored. But he knows he can be world champion in 1991. He just needs to keep pushing for it. And there is Eddie Irvine. Oh! Big shunt for Irvine. A big overshoot at the chicane at the Variante della Roggia. So Eddie Irvine, a big shunt, the winner at the Belgian Grand Prix. And he has overshot massively there. Now he's trying to get going again. I think he's actually buried the Ligier deeper into the gravel than it already was. So big problems for Irvine as the winner of the... Oh, Schumacher's parked it! Schumacher has parked the Ferrari. So what has happened to Schumacher? He's had an engine failure. So both Ferraris out on lap 16 of the Italian Grand Prix. So that's the championship leader, Michael Schumacher, out. Well, devastating for the Tifosi here at Monza, as there will not be a Ferrari scoring points. Well, Irvine is desperately trying to get the Ligier going again. Schumacher and the Ferrari is out of the Italian Grand Prix. Irvine's trying to get going. He's given up. He's thrown his toys out of the pram. And the marshal has now recovered him from the sideline. So Irvine, won at Belgium, out at Monza. So that's actually promoted 2 more places for the drivers who are in front of them. So Hakkinen is in 9th place. Up to 10th now is Gugelmin in the Lola, the Brazilian driver, with Berger and the Italian youngster Luca Badua. And Luca Badua has very good credentials to come into Grand Prix racing. He's going to see out the rest of the season for the Arrows team, and then he'll join them full-time in 1992. Whether that's going to be as a reserve driver or a full-time driver, we don't yet know. That'll all come down to what the Arrows team elect to do. As we look at Rubens Barrichello now, 2nd position in the Tyrrell. And that's on merit because, of course, with Schumacher out of the race, both Ferraris out of the race, in fact, it's going to be a long race for the fans here. The Tifosi are not going to have a fun time of it, really, are they? So it's going to be brutally disappointing for everybody there. Andy Wallace continuing on his way in the Jordan. They'll just be hoping for championship points. The more times you can bring it home in the top 10, the better. Especially with what we've got coming around the bend. It's not going to be that long until the Grand Prix season starts up again. But a lot of interesting facts coming from those first 16 laps. The Honda on raw pace can match the main protagonists, although Senna is now lapping Naoki Hattori. So maybe it's more possible for Suzuki than it is for Hattori. Hattori has actually extended his deal, and Warwick, that's a big shunt. Big crash for Derek Warwick. Oh my goodness. The car actually going airborne and landing rather badly, and Warwick is out of the car pretty quickly. And over the top of the wall, but the marshal's recovering him. Derek Warwick, a big accident for the Lotus driver there. So both Lotuses are now out of the Italian Grand Prix as well. And that was a ferocious shunt for Derek Warwick, the man who won at Jerez last year. But what a shame for Derek Warwick, whose brother Paul is actually going to be on the grid next year. He's going to be driving for the March engineering team, which is going to be run by the Swiss manager David Junt, who has been looking after the Monteverdi Vaillant operation this year. So a fabulous situation for Williams at the moment, because they are 1st and 3rd. Only this man is really spoiling the party for them. Rubens Barrichello running in 2nd place. But it looks like Senna and Barrichello are both running one-stop strategies, as it also looks like is Dev Ferran and Nannini. So the real challenger for the Grand Prix victory here is actually Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Red Bull Tyrrell, because of course he's already made his first stop and he's going to make a 2nd stop, but he's 33.8 seconds back from Senna, so that's pretty close. When they come out of the pits, when Senna comes out of the pits, Frentzen's going to be right behind him, and then it'll come down to the slipstream, and I would not at all be surprised if Frentzen manages to get the upper hand on Senna just on the slipstream alone, because that is a massive factor here at Monza. As just in front, that's Manuel Reuter trying to get back up the inside of Andy Wallace in the Jordan, and he does, and he gets back into 13th place. So Manuel Reuter doing his best, his first ever appearance in a Grand Prix. It's a tall order for the young German, but Manuel Reuter doing as best as he possibly can, with very little experience at the wheel of this car. It was a bit of a surprise appointment, but I wonder if it's something to do with the incoming Mercedes deal. So now we have 17 cars left. Warwick, Schumacher and Irvine out in very quick succession, as Gerhard Berger in the McLaren continues to try and quest after that victory. He had a very early pit stop compared to everybody else, but he might be playing the long game here. He's down in 10th. There's a long way still to go. It's not done yet. Nannini, 3rd position in his McLaren. in front of Heinz-Harald Frentzen, but by only 4 seconds. And look, the gap has come down to 32.6 between Frentzen in 4th and Senna in the lead. So Frentzen is pushing hard here, trying to steal a decent result away. As Gilles de Ferran comes down the straight in 10th position. That's because he's spun the car. So Gilles de Ferran, who was in 3rd, he's made a pit stop, but now he's spun it. So Gilles de Ferran spinning the car. Not quite sure why the car wouldn't get going again, but at least now it has. And so the Porsche Williams has spun away down to 12th position. Very frustrating for Gilles de Ferran. But Gilles de Ferran now out of the points in the Porsche Williams car. So that's bitterly frustrating for him. That's going to promote Nannini to 3rd, Frentzen to 4th. Patrese in the Ligier still in P5. He quietly gets on with things, does Riccardo Patrese. Then Modena. That's Stefano Modena. And then Mika Hakkinen in front of Mauricio Gugelmin, Gerhard Berger and Luca Badoer. So Badoer looking good to score a point on his debut. Here's Naoki Hattori dueling away with Manuel Reuter. They've just been lapped by the race leader Ayrton Senna. And that's Nannini going off the road. Oh, he was a lucky man in the McLaren. But Frentzen's going to be absolutely on him. 2 Honda engines, both battling side by side. Frentzen's got a good run here on Nannini. But who's going to have the top end speed? It's actually going to be the Tyrrell, but Nannini holds the inside line. No, you don't, says Alessandro Nannini. You're not getting through. These Red Bull Tyrrells are going to be amazing for the rest of this season, that's for sure. So through they come on the far side again. Back up to speed once more. Looking good. Into the braking zone. And Senna is your leader of the Italian Grand Prix of 1991. So James Harvey asking where we can see all the teams and drivers. Yes, you can. There is the Retro Racing Managers League fandom. You can see it all unfold there. You can see how it all played out in 1990, and you can see where it plays out in 1991. And obviously the 1992 fandom page is already being built. Massive thanks to Topher Smith for that. So we'll drop a link into the chat for you, James, so you can follow it all. And of course, if you want to take part, you can add yourself to the Discord. We'll put that in the YouTube chat as well. Oh, Riccardo Patrese goes around. Riccardo Patrese spins the car. 5th position in the Ligier gone. That's exactly where Irvine went off. So bitter disappointment there, bitter goal. That is absolutely not what we were hoping for at all from them. But Riccardo Patrese making a big mistake, and now that's that's really going to cost his chances. And this is a critical end of the season as well, because Patrese really wants a race deal for next year, but he's out. Both he and Eddie Irvine have crashed their cars out of this race. Oh, Bernard's got a puncture, and he's picked that up, having just gone past the pits. That's bitter disappointment. So both Ferrari and Lamborghini will not finish at the Italian Grand Prix of 1991. That's bitter, bitter disappointment. Well, you've got to feel for both teams. They came to Italy really wanting to move their way forward, move their way up the ranks and have a bit of a party here at Monza. And it's not going to happen for either team now. So neither Ferrari nor Lamborghini in a good position here. But it's the Porsche Williams of Ayrton Senna out in front, captained as he is by Frank Williams, Patrick Head and Scott Woodwis, with designer Adrian Newey standing by to make a fantastic car. So by my math, we've now got 15 cars left running in the Italian Grand Prix. I think we've only got 15, because we've just had retirements for Riccardo Patrese and for Eric Bernard. So I think there's only 15 cars left in the Italian Grand Prix, and we're not even at half distance yet. So Rubens Barrichello now looking at 2nd position in the Tyrrell. Here's Gilles de Ferran making his way back up in the 2nd of the Porsche Williams cars, and he makes very easy work indeed of the Benetton of Marc Blundell. Blundell, of course, is going to be driving for the Lotus team for next year. They've really seen him as a great opportunity for next season. So Blundell, we don't know who his teammate's going to be yet. But there's wild rumours going around. It could be Senna. Senna considering a chance to go back to Lotus for 1992 with their new Toyota deal. That'll be fascinating if Ayrton Senna joins up. Rubens Barrichello still pushing in the Red Bull Tyrrell. which is going to have Repco engines for next season in a nice union with Nissan, the Japanese manufacturer. All sorts of Japanese influence in Grand Prix racing in 1992 onwards. Honda, Toyota, Nissan. Oh, that's Frentzen slowing! Heinz-Howard Frentzen, the man who could have challenged Ayrton Senna for the victory when the pit stops all played out. Sam Hall bangs his headset on the pit wall. Devastating bad luck for Heinz-Howard Frentzen. The Tyrrell is looking so much faster in this latter stage of the season. They really want to push for a decent end to the year. And Frentzen with a fast car, but it just got pushed too hard here at Monza. But at least now we know that the Tyrrell is definitely going to be a contender for Grand Prix victories for the next 2 or 3 races of the Grand Prix season. Of course, this is the 12th race of a 17-race season, so there are 5 races to go at the end of this one. So that's Frentzen dropping out of the race then. Carl Wendlinger in the Jordan with its Ferrari engine. Of course, next year it's going to be Jordan Penske Chevrolet. So a lot of American influence in that team, and they're going to coax away the American IndyCar sensation Michael Andretti to the team for next year. Very exciting to see how that's going to look. Honestly, next year there's going to be so many competitive cars on the grid. It's going to be very interesting to see who gets through and who remains out. So through the drivers continue to make progress. Rubens Barrichello now leads the Grand Prix by virtue of the fact that Ayrton Senna has just made his one and only pit stop. I think Barrichello won't be too long till he makes his. There's Alessandro Nannini in the McLaren. Winner at the German Grand Prix earlier this year, Nannini. Alongside Gerhard Berger. With team heads Gerhard Berger and Alessandro Nannini. And of course the main body of the team, Ron Dennis, Mansour Oj, Joe Ramirez and Dave Goddard, the team principal. Ron Dennis very much taking a back seat from the pit wall and letting Dave Goddard manage the team. He said very simply for 1992, we're going to put Berger and Nannini back in the cars again. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So Rubens Barrichello, 13.5 seconds clear in the lead. 19 years of age, the Brazilian. This is an amazing chance for him. He was drafted into the team mid-season when Jean Alesi was banned from a few races for his shenanigans, and Gilles de Ferran skates off the road. That's the second time for Gilles de Ferran. So a big problem for the Williams driver. That's the second time he's dropped it in this Grand Prix. Now he's just signed a contract to extend his involvement with Williams for next year. But it hasn't been made clear whether he's going to be racing for the team or whether he'll still be on the reserve bench, as has been his current race performance this year. He's only driving the Williams Porsche, incidentally, because Thierry Boutsen has been unavailable since he had his 5-race ban for data sharing. But there is the McLaren of Alessandro Nannini, still a contender for the win in my view. And oh my goodness, if an Italian wins the Italian Grand Prix in 1991, that would just be absolutely mega. There's no Ferraris, there's no Lamborghinis left in the race. So why not have Alessandro Nannini go for the win? However, Rubens Barrichello is desperate to become the first teenager to win a Grand Prix. We so nearly had a teenager win last year because Mika Hakkinen, who was only 20 last year, he managed to get his first Grand Prix win, and then, of course, incredibly went on to become the world champion after the most devastating loss for Ayrton Senna at the Australian Grand Prix. He so would have been world champion had it not been for him dropping out of the final race of the season. So Alessandro Nannini running in 3rd place. Now Modena and Hakkinen have both come in. So Modena in the Lola and Hakkinen in the Brabham, both coming into the pits then for their one and only stop. And as you can see, we now have just 14 cars running the Italian Grand Prix, as Frentzen is a couple of laps down the field now, and so there's only 14 cars left, and we're not even halfway into the Grand Prix yet. So we've lost 12 cars in the first 25 laps out of 53. So the attrition rate is higher than ever here in Italy. It was pretty high at Spa, and here in Monza it's just as intense. And into the pits comes Barrichello from the lead. No problems at all for this Tyrrell, even though we saw Frentzen putting out of the race a short while ago. Rubens Barrichello, the 19-year-old from Sao Paulo in Brazil, very much the new Brazilian contender on the grid under the shadow of Ayrton Senna. But Senna goes past the pits. He takes back the lead of the Italian Grand Prix, and he would so dearly love to win at Monza to get his championship assault back on track. Nannini goes past the pits into 2nd in the McLaren. And is Gerhard Berger going to go through into third position? Not quite. Barrichello will get out in third place ahead of Berger and Gugelmin. And then the Italian driver, Luca Badua, who is making his Grand Prix debut in the Arrows, is in sixth position. Then it's Blundell in the Benetton, Modena in the Lola, Hakkinen in the Brabham, and Andy Wallace, this man here, in the Jordan, looking to give them a championship point, ahead of Gilles de Ferran in the Williams, Hattori in the Honda. And you can see for yourself, everybody else is out of the race. Manuel Reuter in the Brabham still going in 13th, and in 14th is Carl Wendlinger in the second Jordan. So a crazy Italian Grand Prix at the moment, with everybody else out of the race. Gugelmin has come in, so too is the Apple Benetton of Blundell. You're going to see a lot more from the Apple Benetton in 1992. It's going to have Hakkinen and Coulthard as drivers for 1992. Young Scottish driver David Coulthard, who's been in Formula 3000 this year, and still driving a very solid season. But Ayrton Senna, coming off the final turn, he has done his one and only pit stop, so he'll just keep going. And there's Nannini coming into the pits in the McLaren. He went a little bit further into the race than the Porsche Williams, and it hasn't worked out for him. He wasn't able to stay for... Oh, that's Luca Badua. Fifth position for the Arrows driver, just dropping it a little bit, coming off the turn. The Arrows looks so cool these days. It started the season with Adidas sponsorship, but unfortunately they decided to take the stickers off the car from this race onwards. They said, we're not involved in the team anymore, and they're not going to be involved in the crew in 1992. They haven't said that they are out of Formula 1. They've just made it very clear that they don't really think they're going to have an involvement in Grand Prix racing, or certainly not with Arrows in 1992. They've had their time, and now the car is basically littered with Campari and Domino's Pizza. So they certainly, I'll tell you what, the catering down at Team Arrows must be fantastic. Into the pits comes Luca Badua from fifth position then in the Arrows BMW. I'm amazed actually that Arrows elected not to go with BMW engines again in 1992, because they had a great relationship with them. There's even rumours going around that Williams might actually pull the plug on their Porsche deal for next year and go with BMW engines for next season. It could be very interesting if they elect to do that. There's all sorts of wild rumours coming out of the team. So, very interesting stuff. And up the inside, that's a beautiful move from Marc Blundell, who gets past Luca Badua on the Italian's way out of the pits. So Rubens Barrichello just lapping Manuel Reuter. So, fabulous chances to progress and move forward, as there is Rubens Barrichello. Still having a very solid and tidy time of it at the moment. So Rubens Barrichello flying through on the far side of the course. Coming up to the braking zone for the Variante della Roggia. And Rubens Barrichello looking very strong here in second place. There's Gerhard Berger in the McLaren. Definitely one of the most consistent teams of the season. They always seem to bang in points when it counts. And as another representation of that, Berger and Nannini are third and fourth. You don't have to win a lot of races to win the Constructors' Championship as far as Dave Goddard is concerned, but you do need to finish in the points as much as possible. And that's what McLaren, in particular, are very good at indeed. So a fabulous situation continues, as that's Rubens Barrichello. Working very strongly there, the Brazilian. So still they battle on. And here's Gerhard Berger. Berger looking very tidy. In second position at the moment. And there is just a representation of who is still going to stay the full distance of the Grand Prix. So Senna's not going to pit in again. You can see that from his fuel load. And Rubens Barrichello should see the whole distance of the race now as well, because he only made a one pit stop strategy in unison as well. So it's Senna, Barrichello, Berger, Nannini and Stefano Modena in the top five. In fact, there are a fabulous plethora of drivers there that we don't always get to see in the top five. Certainly Stefano Modena on home soil, fifth position for him. So Lola, which has been saved at the last minute, they thought they weren't going to be racing in Grand Prix in 1992. They thought they were going to pull the plug on operations and focus purely on the Formula 3000 cars for next year and the IndyCar operations they have. But at the 11th hour they were saved. There was a fabulous push from Fittipaldi, of all places. Emerson Fittipaldi was going to team up with Nelson Piquet to run a team in 1992, which would be Fittipaldi Chevrolet. Was think, of what it was going to be. And at the 11th hour, the deal fell through. So Fittipaldi did not register their interest for being on the Grand Prix grid in 1992 after all. And so Lola were able to do a deal to put things together to save the team for the last minute, and they will be on the grid in 1992. Gilles de Ferran now making his bid back in the Williams, dives up the inside of Badua and gets through. That's 9th position for the Williams Porsche. So still some great performances and some great battles going on here. Rubens Barrichello in the Tyrrell. A very solid performance from the young Brazilian from Sao Paulo on lap 31. And so Senna is your leader. A great performance from the Porsche Williams. Barrichello second, then Berger, Nannini, Modena, Hakkinen, Gugelmin, Blundell, Gilles de Ferran and Luca Badua. That's your 10-point scorers at the moment. Now Hattori 11th in the Honda, so they're not far away from scoring points. Manuel Reuter in the Brabham is 12th. Then Andy Wallace and Carl Vendlinger in the two Jordans. But there's a long way still to go. Still got 23 laps of racing still to undertake here at the Italian Grand Prix. Only just gone past half distance. So Senna looking for another victory. He hasn't had the most successful season, and by rights he should be leading the World Championship based on the amount of races he has retired from the lead of in 1991. But that Porsche engine is still quite fast but quite unreliable. They really need an engine that's going to go the distance if they're going to be world champions next year. But how much can they hope to progress with the Porsche next year? That's really going to be the key factor in their decision making. There's not been any announcement. There's not been much announced by Porsche Williams of late, other than that they're going to keep Gilles de Ferran in the team for next year. But they haven't stressed whether that's as a race driver or a reserve driver, because he's currently in reserve driver mode. Something weird is going on at Stefano Modena's Lola, as Hakkinen goes through and takes over 5th position. Mika Hakkinen, who is of course going to be at Benetton next year. So Gerhard Berger coming through for 3rd position in the McLaren. Diving down into the braking zone. All still going strong for the McLaren of Gerhard Berger. And of course next year it's looking like that's going to be a McLaren Mugen rather than a McLaren Honda, because they're not going to be allowed to carry the Honda badge on the McLaren car for next year. Of course, knowing that Honda is going to have a full works opportunity and rebadge the engines, that could commercially give McLaren an option to do something else, because they're going to need a different... Oh, Berger's got a loose wheel! Berger's got a loose wheel! Look at that! The left rear of the car is wobbling off the car. So Gerhard Berger in dire straits here in the McLaren. He needs to get that back to the pits. So this is a really big problem for Berger. If he just needs to coast it round the Parabolica and bring that car back into the pits, and the McLaren team could still get points for Berger. But he's slowing big time, and of course, that puts a lot of stress on the car. So as Nannini laps one of the Jordans, Berger's pulling off, he's out. Now that's great news for the Hattori and Honda brigades. So Naoki Hattori comes through to get into 10th position, and I'm afraid Gerhard Berger is out of the race. So, big disaster there at McLaren. Just as we were talking about McLaren likely to have Mugen engines for next year unless they decide to go for one of the other manufacturers on the table. BMW are still looking for partners for 1992. And they haven't announced it yet. Apparently they're in discussions with several teams for next year, including both McLaren and with Benetton and with Williams. So it could be very interesting to see what plays out in the off-season. So Luca Badua, very talented young Arrows driver. He certainly seems to have gone to a good car at a good time, hasn't he? He's looking good for points here on his debut. 9th position at the moment for the Italian. As Naoki Hattori allows Rubens Barrichello to lap him, but he goes up in a 10th position regardless, passing the stranded McLaren of Gerhard Berger. So Honda are looking good for a championship point, but not with a Goody Suzuki, with Naoki Hattori. So fascinating stuff so far. And here is the most in-demand driver in Formula 1 for 1992, Ayrton Senna. So many teams courting him for next year. Williams want him, Benetton want him. McLaren apparently don't want him, but they have had him before, of course. Lotus want him, Ligier want him, Renault want him. So it could be a very entertaining off-season, that's for sure. So there is Rubens Barrichello now chasing the Honda of Naoki Hattori to lap him. This is a great performance so far from the young 19-year-old Rubens Barrichello, who could literally be staring a Grand Prix win in the face here at Monza. Hattori's got big superior horsepower in that Honda engine car though, and he's coming back at him. Don't forget that's the works Honda engine. As Mika Hakkinen now finds himself in 4th position as a result of Berger's retirement. So the reigning world champion, Mika Hakkinen. The car doesn't look particularly stable though, does it? Looks swarming around all over the place. I wonder if he's got something wrong with that Brabham, because it's definitely looking a little bit shaky. This has been a battle that's been going on lap after lap between these two. Barrichello laps Hattori, then onto the main straight. Hattori gets him back in the slipstream because he's got a very powerful Honda engine in the back of his Honda. Much more powerful than the Tyrrell engine has proved to be in recent weeks. Rubens Barrichello is unlapped again. And this is costing a lot of time here, as now Stefano Modena has caught up to Mika Hakkinen in the Brabham, who is having all sorts of problems with that car. Modena's trying to get through past Hakkinen. What is Hakkinen doing? He's just conceded the place to Modena. Modena doesn't get through though, I notice. So they are trying to catch up. We've got the two Lolas, look, of Modena, Hakkinen and Gujamin, and they are dueling over 4th position. Hakkinen all over the shop, trying to get through. So Hakkinen tries his luck again. He'll get into the slipstream now, surely, of Stefano Modena. He'll have his chance, but then so too could Gujamin. Hakkinen actually pulls out of the slipstream completely at the wrong point of the course. And Senna is in the pits. Senna's had his one pit stop. What's happened to Senna? He's got a brake issue. So brake problems for Senna. Well, the Williams is not guaranteed to be winning this Grand Prix then. So Ayrton Senna comes into the pits. At least he makes it back to the pits. It's a quick stop, 8.1 seconds. But I think this is going to cost Senna the lead of the Grand Prix, because Senna's going to come out in 2nd position. Indeed he does. Here comes Rubens Barrichello and he flashes past the pits. There he goes. So Senna rejoins in 2nd position in the Italian Grand Prix, as now the 19-year-old Tyrrell driver Rubens Barrichello leads at Monza. Nannini is 3rd. Modena's 4th. And that's Hakkinen! Well, that tells us something about what was wrong with the car. He's had all sorts of handling difficulties. Both the Lolas had got past him. What is going on? Big handling problems in that Brabham, and big damage for the reigning world champion Mika Hakkinen. Well, that kind of tells you everything you need to know. A frustrated Mika Hakkinen, obviously still trying to improve the fortunes of the Brabham team. He'll be with Benetton next year, and he has already said how much he would love to have Ayrton Senna as a teammate in 1992. Because there's rumours circulating that Senna could well be contesting a chance at Benetton next year. Now here's Barrichello, still having this incredible battle, by the way, with Naoki Hattori to lap him and stay a lap ahead of him. But Hattori's got a very fast Honda, unlaps himself, and here comes Senna on the scene. Senna is having a fabulous time of it. Now this is counterproductive for Hattori. Of course, Honda might still be feeling quite bitter about the fact that Tyrrell are not interested in working with them next year. So, a fascinating situation, and it's quite interesting as well, because apparently there's been some communication to race control. Tyrrell think that they're being cost the win here. Here comes Senna, and this could prove it. Senna's going to get the sweep on Barrichello. He'll get a bit of side draft as well, and I think Senna is going to take the lead back of the Italian Grand Prix. He had some issues with the brakes. They've cooled them down in the pit stop, but Senna has got back through to the lead of the Italian Grand Prix. And I think Sam Hall's argument about having issues... And Mika Hakkinen goes off again! He has just binned the car, brought it back into the pits to repair it, and then he goes off again. Big problems with this Brabham. And now even his teammate Manuel Reuter has got past him. And so Hakkinen has rejoined in 11th position, still struggling to get this car working the way he likes it. But Manuel Reuter is in front of him now, looking for his first point on debut. Luca Badoer is looking for his first points on debut. And that's Mark Blundell slowing in the Benetton. The Apple Benetton is coming to a stop. Very unfortunate indeed for this car, which is going to be very impressive indeed next year, we are told. But Mark Blundell pulling the car out of the race with a puncture. These tyres are really overworked at Monza. It's about whether you can get back to the pits before the car is destroyed. And unfortunately, Mark Blundell brings the race to an end for the Benetton team. They will not score points at Monza. I think they've got a better chance at Estoril. So, a fabulous situation. Oh, and a spin! That's Modena. Stefano Modena has tripped over his teammate there, Mauricio Gugelmin. So Modena spins the Lola. Well, bit of an issue there for Stefano Modena. He, of course, has joined the Lamborghini team for next year. As Gilles de Ferran is now going to catch up to Modena, and he's going to make an easy pickings move here. So, after all the problems of earlier on, Gilles de Ferran, just by keeping the Williams Porsche in the race, is now back up to 5th place. Great work from the Brazilian. So after the scare of the brake issues for Ayrton Senna earlier on, Senna continuing on his way. And Stefano Modena very lucky to get out of the draft there of his teammate. They very nearly had a massive crash, the two Lolas. But back into the lead of the race again is the Porsche Williams of Ayrton Senna. It was a light scare, but it wasn't anything serious. As Stefano Modena now makes the bid down the straight on Gilles de Ferran. But Gilles de Ferran still able to keep the Williams pointed in the right direction. We know he's going to be in the car for 1992. We don't know anybody else. And of course next year the teams will pick a test driver who will be their first reserve, and they will also pick a young development driver who will be under the age of 25 who will race in Formula 3000 next year. And obviously that will help them get their younger drivers up to speed in case they need them, and that's going to reduce some of the confusion needed around drivers getting race bans. Oh, that's Barrichello! He was destined not to win the Italian Grand Prix, no matter what happened with the hold-ups from Naoki Hattori. That's such a disappointment. Rubens Barrichello has been one of the drivers of the day here at Monza, and you could sense that an opportunity to win a Grand Prix was knocking here. He really had a good shot at this, and that's devastating bad luck for Rubens Barrichello, the 19-year-old Brazilian. He's been such a star, and now look, he's actually blowing the smoke in the face of Naoki Hattori, almost as an act of revenge for being held up for so long. Well, that could end up being a big argument between the two teams. But certainly for Rubens Barrichello, he's going to try and bring the car back to the pits in the hope that he can get the car restarted. But no, he's doing his best to, I think, just shake it out, or shake the gremlins out. But I'm afraid Rubens Barrichello is going to be out of the Italian Grand Prix. Bitter, bitter gall for Ken Tyrrell, for Sam Hall, for Harvey Postlethwaite, for all the team behind the scenes. Very unfortunate indeed, as Rubens Barrichello out of the race. Well, the Tyrrell team will obviously have words to say after the race. And a fascinating, fascinating situation there for the team as Rubens Barrichello gets out of the car, walks away, bitter disappointment, throws his helmet on the sidelines. So close to a maiden Grand Prix victory for Rubens Barrichello. He could sense it, we could all sense it. But unfortunately the Red Bull Tyrrell has gone as far as it's going to go here at Monza. What a shame. So, and oh, Stefano Modena skates off at Parabolica. Wow, fascinating stuff. So, Modena skating off the road there briefly. So, a fabulous situation there. Is the Lola with Ferrari power, of course, in the back of that car. And off skate, that's how he did it. So, this is the replay, skating off at the Parabolica. So, Lola with the Ferrari engines, unfortunately going no further into the braking zone than he would have liked. And so Modena continues on his way. So they continue going. Of course, Lola, we're not entirely sure what engines they're going to have for 1992. But it'll certainly be fascinating to see what they come up with. They're going to have a complete rebrand for next year, as MasterCard will finally pull their influence from the car. And apparently the team is going to be known as PIAA Lola Cars next year. It'll be a sort of a support from the Japanese wing of Lola. Oh, and that's Gugelmin flying off the road. So both Lolas have had a big shunt at that exact corner of late, and that's going to inherit another position for de Ferran. Here comes Gilles de Ferran. So Gilles de Ferran, the Williams, is going to just sidle up alongside the Lola. Surely he'll outbrake Gugelmin into the Variante Ascari, and he's done so. So now that's Williams cars in first and third. So So that's a big turnaround for the Williams team. They were first and 10th at one stage, but Gilles de Ferran has been on the absolute mother of all comebacks. He gets through past the Lola of Mauricio Gugelmin. They are going strong. And Ayrton Senna leads the Italian Grand Prix. Surely this is going to be the chance then for Williams to put some decent points on the board. De Ferran has not shaken off his countryman, Mauricio Gugelmin. Got 3 Brazilians in the top 4, and we had 4 in the top 5 when Rubens Barrichello was on track. Some big talents in this Grand Prix field. So it'll be fascinating to see how things continue to play out here. But Ayrton Senna looking good. He was looking good earlier on, of course. They just got to hope that those brakes don't overheat again, because that's where things got a real problem for the Porsche Williams. Senna obviously driving to within an inch of his life in this car. Really feels confident in the Porsche Williams. He just needs to continue that confidence. Nannini in second, then De Ferran, Gugelmin, Badua, Modena. And then it is Naoki Hattori, incredibly, running in 7th place. So a lot of points coming on the board for Honda. And then we'll have Manuel Reuter and Mika Hakkinen both in the Brabham. And then the 2 Jordans, Wallace and Wendlinger. So it looks as though Jordan are going to get a point no matter what here. It'll still be battle as Gilles de Ferran and Mauricio Gugelmin are having a sensational race for 3rd position, the 2 Brazilians. Can Lola get on the overall podium? That would be something pretty sensational for them. But all of the team, Eric Broadley and Tom Cairns on the sidelines, absolutely rooting for Gugelmin. This will definitely give them a big chance of a competitive run for next year. So still they continue on. De Ferran, 3rd position, ahead of Mauricio Gugelmin. And the 2 Brazilians continue their duel for the final spot on the podium as Mika Hakkinen in the Brabham is desperately trying to close up on his own teammate Manuel Reuter and try and get past him. He's got all sorts of handling problems with that Brabham. Although he'll be pretty happy and content to get into a Benetton next year. He still doesn't really know what engine he's going to have in that car for next year. Is it going to be a Porsche? Is it going to be a BMW? Or is it going to be something else entirely? We're still none the wiser on that one. They were hoping, I think, at one stage to have a Mechachrome engine in the back of that Benetton, which would have been a Renault customer engine, but Renault have decided they're not going to have any customers at all next year. McLaren, of course, if they're going to remain customers of Honda, they're going to have to rebadge the engine. It's going to be a McLaren Mugen for next year. Commercially, I'm not entirely sure whether Ron Dennis is going to like that. So Senna out of the final turn. As Mika Hakkinen finally catches up to his teammate Manuel Reuter. These 2 are going to have Mercedes engines for next year than the 2 Brabham cars. And apparently it's going to have an all-Welsh flavour is what we're told for next season. So expect the Welsh Tourist Board to have a lot of fun as Mauricio Gugelmin overshoots there into the Rettifilio. He was very lucky not to throw it away, and that really has given 3rd position in this race to Gilles de Ferran for the time being. 10 laps to go, and Ayrton Senna is approaching Mauricio Gugelmin to lap him, and then he'll be approaching his teammate to lap him. So Senna definitely putting himself in all the right places to win this Grand Prix, but it's not done yet. Those final 10 laps could get very tasty, and even Ayrton Senna knows, you know, he lost the Canadian Grand Prix this year while leading it by quite a considerable margin when the car pulled off on the final lap. So he knows that this isn't done yet. Gugelmin gets out of the way and lets Senna lap him. So Senna continues in the lead of the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. All the talk is about 1992. We're going to have a brilliant 17 race calendar for the 1992 season. It's going to get pretty exciting to travel through. Although it's okay. Senna's gone off! Senna's gone off for the final turn. Now Ayrton Senna trying to get the Williams Porsche back into operation. That was a back marker, I think, catching Senna out. So Senna recovers, but Modena's gone through to unlap himself. Nannini surely is going to come through to take the lead of the Grand Prix. There is Senna in the Williams. There's Nannini. So Alessandro Nannini is going to get back on the pace here, and he's going to surely overtake Ayrton Senna. That's twice now that Senna has lost the lead of the Grand Prix. Here comes Nannini. He's going to get his opportunity. Dives through, and Alessandro Nannini takes the lead of the Italian Grand Prix. So, a big mistake for Senna. A big mistake for the Brazilian. And off goes Gugelmin. Gugelmin loses it for the second time at the first Lesmo. So big problems there for Gugelmin. What a turnaround for this Grand Prix. Alessandro Nannini leads at Monza. But Senna, driving angry, is back up to speed again. It's those brakes. He's just been pushing the brakes so hard here at Monza, and they locked up. But Senna has got him on the pace. And Senna is going to be side by side again. Surely he's going to out-drag. He does indeed. So Senna retakes the lead of the Italian Grand Prix. Nannini only leading it for one lap. Wow. Senna really pushing himself into a tough position. But he gets the lead of the Italian Grand Prix back. Scott Woodward has probably got 27 more grey hairs than when the race started. Sitting on the pit wall, sweating cobs. But if Senna wins this race, it's certainly going to be his greatest ever Grand Prix win. What an astonishing end to the 1991 Italian Grand Prix, as Senna desperately tries to get himself back onto the top step of the podium again. Well, Senna in the lead ahead of Alessandro Nannini, and then a minute back is his teammate Gilles de Ferran. Gugelmin, Badua in an incredible 5th place for Arrows. And then Stefano Modena in the Lola, that has gone off the road once before. Gugelmin's gone off twice at that point. So a big spin for the Brazilian, avoided, but even Senna has dropped it in this race. I mean, he lost it at the Parabolica. He had to come into the pits to sort out the brakes. But now he's got no choice. He's just got to push and hope that the brakes are going to go the distance ahead of Alessandro Nannini. But surely even Senna, who's probably on lift and coast mode by this stage, is really struggling to outdrive the deficiencies of the Porsche Williams. And Mika Häkkinen goes off the road. Big spin for Häkkinen. Into the barriers. I think he's just avoided contact with the barriers, actually. But that was Häkkinen losing it all on his own. And if he retires from this race now, it's going to be a double points finish for Jordan. So clearly, Topher Smith is hoping that Häkkinen keeps that car in the gravel, but Häkkinen is reversing it out. And so Mika Häkkinen gets going again in 9th position. And there is the Jordan behind him of Andy Wallace. So at least now Wallace has got a chance to close up on a rather disgruntled Mika Häkkinen. We are on lap 47 of 53, just 7 laps remaining of the Italian Grand Prix of 1991. And it's been brutal. It's been very demanding indeed. And that's Senna. Look, he's really struggling on the brakes. He is really struggling. Ayrton Senna is doing his best here in the lead of the Italian Grand Prix, but it's clear that those brakes have barely got anything left. So Nannini closes up again. He's in the slipstream. And surely Nannini will get another run at him down to the Parabolica. Nannini's got to stay patient here in the McLaren. Stay on him, stay on him. He's got a chance in the slipstream, at least down to turn 1, if not the final corner. So Nannini's going to be in the slipstream. Closing, closing, closing. The opportunity will come again, surely, at the Rettifilio chicane. So Senna is just carefully looking after these brakes. But Nannini has got Senna in the draft. This is one of the most thrilling races of the season. And with 6 laps to go, it's not over at all. There's Gilles de Ferran, still going in 3rd position with his Porsche Williams. I think they'll need new brakes at Porsche for Estoril. As Gugelmin continues in 4th place, and he goes off again! So that's the 3rd time Mauricio Gugelmin has dropped it in the space of about 10 laps. So Mauricio Gugelmin struggling in his Lola almost as much as Senna is. I wonder if it really has taken the toll on the brakes here of pretty much every car. But Gilles de Ferran looking very solid now in 3rd position. He was as low down as 11th at one stage, and he's managed to fight his way back. Got to say, really, driver of the Grand Prix has got to be this man, Gilles de Ferran, fighting his way back into 3rd position. Obviously, having his contract renewed for 1992 has been the perfect tonic for him to get himself back into a race-winning mode. He hasn't won his first Grand Prix yet, of course, but he's certainly put on some shows. As Senna now follows in behind the Lola of Stefano Modena, having already lapped him once, but he lost ground, of course, and now he gets to lap him again. And he completes that 48. Just 5 to go for Ayrton Senna as Carl Wendlinger is going slowly through turn 1. Thought for a moment that was going to be him game over, but no. The Austrian continues. He didn't go very long into the pre-qualifying race, but he's doing a lot better now as Senna continues in the lead of the Italian Grand Prix, just 1.3 seconds ahead of Alessandro Nannini. He cannot afford to have another issue, but that Williams is on borrowed time with very tricky and very hot brakes. And Gugelmin goes off for the 4th time, and this time he properly spins it. Now Gugelmin's got to be careful. He comes back on the road in front of a wayward Senna. Senna's going to get held up by Gugelmin. And here come the 2 Lolas. Senna's going to pop out from behind Gugelmin. Nannini's going to pop out from behind Modena. Modena's going to try and take on his teammate. 3 wide on the run down to the Variante Ascari. And Senna's going to lose out to Modena. Senna's got to be careful here. He can't afford to get into this. Nor can Nannini. If they get spat out, it's game over. So Nannini laps Gugelmin and Senna laps the Lola of Modena. Oh, scary stuff at Monza for both Williams and McLaren. That was so close for both Senna and Nannini. They both almost lost the Grand Prix there. And there's 4 laps to go. It's not over. Don't forget that in 1988, Ayrton Senna lost the Italian Grand Prix with 2 laps to go when he tripped over Jean-Louis Schlesser in, ironically enough, a Williams when he was in a McLaren. It could be the other way round if we're not careful. Mind you, Nannini is currently getting stuck behind Stefano Modena. He now gets the move up the inside, but Modena made it very difficult for him. Oh, and Modena overshoots, and now his teammate Gugelmin is coming for him. And with the Lolas holding each other up, you know what this means? It puts the arrows of Luca Badua into 4th position. There he is, in front of Senna. So Luca Badua, on his debut, the Italian is looking to come home in 4th place in the Arrows BMW. Amazing for Badua. I wonder if he can keep it together. So Modena overshoots on the exit of the Variante Ascari. Just about keeps it together. There's a bit of a lock-up in front. Don't tell me that's Senna having more problems with the brakes. Well, he's got to keep it going for these last 3 laps. 3 laps to go in the Italian Grand Prix. Senna from Nannini, De Ferran, Badua, Modena, Gugelmin, Hattori, Reuter, Hakkinen and Andy Wallace ahead of Carl Wendlinger. This is one of the most watchable Grand Prix of the season, because it's clear that Senna in the Porsche Williams is in trouble. It's clear that Nannini has a McLaren capable enough to pick up the pieces if he drops it. And there's even a potential that a debutant is going to get a podium. Luca Badua in 4th position just needs to keep going as Modena launches in on the inside of his teammate Mauricio Gugelmin. Gugelmin doesn't fight him. So Modena gets up into 5th position. I wonder if that was a team order to get Gugelmin out of the way of Stefano Modena, because that's cost them a chance at 4th position for the time being. First Gugelmin going off and then Modena being held up. So Alessandro Nannini trying to close up on his countryman Luca Badua, who is having a great debut with Arrows. 4th position. Looking really solid. I think that could be the Arrows team's best result of the season if they keep this going. So down into the Parabolica for the 51st time out of 53 laps. And surely now it is going to be Senna just coaxing it through for the final 2. He's had his moments as Senna in this one. Got to be so careful to the finish. But as long as he just lifts and coasts all the way through, at least he's gone further into this one than he did the 1988 Italian Grand Prix, tripping over Jean-Louis Schlesser at that point just a couple of corners ago. But Senna is in the lead at Monza. Here's Luca Badua. Good to keep the spotlight on the young Italian as he lets Alessandro Nannini pass him. So a fabulous situation still going strong here at Monza for the young Italian Luca Badua. Senna is off! Senna is off! Oh, he spun it and he's broken his front wing. He tried ever so hard to keep the car going in the lead, but the brakes have just overcooked for the final time. Senna desperately trying to get the car going again. He's in 2nd place by a long way now. The front wing is broken, and that means he's got to come in and fit a new one. He won't be competitive. He won't be able to keep it on the road for another lap. So Alessandro Nannini in the McLaren inherits the lead on the penultimate lap at Monza. Lightning strikes twice for Senna, just as it did in 1988. The win is gone, but can he still get a podium? All he's got to do essentially is come back into the pits and repair the front nose. So Senna has tried so hard to keep this very awkward Williams going. But you know what? At least it looks to me as though the Williams pair is going to get a double points finish, which they haven't done for a long time this year. So Senna comes in. Bitter disappointment for the Brazilian. The win is gone. He's shaking his head. He has tried every trick in the book to keep this car going. But he has to come into the pits to change the front wing. Put a quick splash of fuel in. It'll be a short stop this. They're going to put fresh tyres on. They're going to cool down the brakes, I think, as well. Just a little bit more. 8.7 seconds. De Ferran is actually going to get through into second, I think. So Senna, he's going to lose out here to Gilles de Ferran as he comes through. There's Nannini on the last lap, lapping the Jordan for the second time of Carl Wendlinger. And Senna is, in fact, in second place in front of Gilles de Ferran. So he is going to finish in P2. But Alessandro Nannini is going to come through to take a fabulous victory for Italy. And listen to the crowd. The Italian fans know they're going to get an Italian Grand Prix victory. It's going to be Alessandro Nannini who wins his home race. He wins the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. What a fairy tale for Alessandro Nannini. It's painful for Senna, but it's a fairy tale for Nannini. Wow, absolutely sensational as Senna continues in second place. Just a handful of seconds in front of his teammate Gilles de Ferran. He'll be disappointed with second place. But you know what? He'll get 12 points on the board on a day when Schumacher didn't. On a day when Mansell didn't. On a day when Berger didn't. So Senna can still be relatively happy championship-wise, even though he's lost the win. He'll still get second place at Monza, and that's better than he's got for several races. Ayrton Senna, a fabulous fight, but second place for him at the Italian Grand Prix in front of the driver of the day. Do not argue, Gilles de Ferran, third position. What a great drive from him. And Luca Badoa, fourth position on his debut for Arrows. What a result. The Lolas in 5th and 6th behind Nannini, Senna, De Ferran and Badoa. Hattori is 7th for Honda. The Brabhams get a double points finish for Reuter and Hakkinen. And Jordan score a point for Andy Wallace. The last man home, Carl Wendlinger, a double finish for the team. Bitter disappointment for Barrichello, for Blundell, for Gerhard Berger with that loose wheel in the McLaren. And for Frentzen, who had a fight for the victory, Patrese, Bernard, Derek Warwick, Michael Schumacher dropping out in the early phase, of course, Eddie Irvine, the Belgian Grand Prix winner, Tracy, Luendijk, Mansell, who was leading and retired, then Brundle, Alboreto, and Aguri Suzuki. The fastest man of the race was actually Nigel Mansell, would you believe, in the very early stages of the race, ahead of Senna, Frentzen, and Gerhard Berger. But none of them take the victory. That goes to Alessandro Nannini, who gets a home win in the Italian Grand Prix ahead of Senna and De Ferran. It's Williams that pick up the most points from Monza, but it's McLaren that get the glory for their Italian boy wonder, Alessandro Nannini. 6 races to go. The championship lead for Michael Schumacher is not gone, but the title fight has only intensified. I'm Jake Sanson. We'll see you next time for the Portuguese Grand Prix at Estoril.